Today's video is going to go over the process that I use to paint the Santa Claus that you see on your screen. Of course, these are the techniques I use. Use whichever techniques you are more comfortable with. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using a freehand shield, or I'm using a paintbrush as a freehand shield, and that is Autoborn Sealer Black. From there on, all of the paintings I'm going to be using are going to be the createx airbrush colors, the standard createx airbrush colors, with the exception of I had no white, so I'm using a little bit of golden white when I use some white paint in here. So with my reds and my oranges, with my reds, I take the transparent red and I mix transparent green with it to dull it down just a little bit. And then when I want to deepen my shadows in, I take the transparent green, add more to the original mix until I get a darker tone to an almost brown tone, and continue to deepen in and darken and create those shadows as we move along. And the little red portions are not very major portion of this painting, but very, very important, obviously, or it wouldn't look like Santa Claus. So again, we were at the orange, so I'm laying a very light layer of orange in here, and then I'm going to sketch around and get around all my lines. And as you'll see, I'll put my textures in as I build, so I'm not just spraying in there. Most of the work I do here will be done with the freehand. However, there'll be a couple of instances where I'll do a little bit of erasing in here. So again, I took that first layer, orange, added a little bit of blue to it, wanted to get a little darker, added a little bit more blue to it, and continue on. So I've got 3 layers in here, just using orange and blue. And to get that darkest tone, some of those original orange colors will show through. And that is how we continue to deepen in. It's pretty simple process here. The button, I just basically freehanded in there. I didn't even have a sketch on it, so that's just the way it is. So as you can see, what I did here is darken out from there, and then I'm going to come back and pull out the highlights and hit highlights at each little button, and as you can see, looks very, very shiny. Using my electric eraser there to pull out a few highlights to make that look kind of leatherish. The lips right here, that's not going to look very, very realistic at first, but as you can tell later on, once I get some color around it, it will work in. So now we're going to start working on, colors around. I want to point out on this ball here, the colors that I'm putting in there is darker tones of what the color that the hair would be behind it. So it is so that you can get that impression that you can see through it. We had to put those darker tones in there that match the color of the eventual color of the hair that's behind it and the background. Did use a little paintbrush right there for that white. Get that very, very dark, and then we just came in here and glazed over with a orange paint just to give that effect in there. And as you see as we progress in the picture, how that's going to create a little bit of a glow. So we get this sepia looking tone with the orange and blue mix, and it's roughly a sepia tone that we're coming here and doing the hair. And the hair is one of those things, hopefully this will help a lot of people, because I know people really struggle with hair. Notice how I'm just putting in some really big rough shapes. When we say that you should work hair in clumps, that's exactly what we're talking about. So notice how I'm hitting the big shadows and general layout of the hair. I'm going to do the same thing with the mustache here. And this is going to look like it's way, way, way too dark, but once we start putting other colors in around it, that will change very, very rapidly. So we put a little bit of orange in there. We're gonna work on this hand a little bit. And so that's very just orange, and it's very, very lightly sprayed. And then I use the red and black mix that I used on the suit around the hands a little bit. We'll get a little bit of glowy action off of those hands. You will not have to tell me that those hands do not look 100% anatomically correct. I'm very aware of that, and we're going to cover them up a little bit. But this is a reference from another artist, and in order to pay homage to that artist, I wasn't going to go around there and start messing around with his stuff, so I simply painted the hands the way he originally painted the hands. I do not know who that artist is. So then we come in, continue to darken and darken. Now in that very, very darkest spot, I added a little bit of black to my red and green mix. So, that's not spraying black directly on it or going direct black. I just added a little bit of black for that very, very darkest whole section, like where it's going up and wrapping underneath his sleeve. Once we get the darks in, we're going to come in, we're going to add a little bit of highlighting in there with the white, and you're going to see how ugly that white looks on top of those flesh tones, and because of the blue shift creation. And then we're just going to come back and we're going to add a little bit of transparent orange over the top of that to knock the blue shift back. Also, our glow is an amber glow, so I really knew it wasn't going to be a problem to come in and put whites in like that. So you'll see it here in just a moment. And yeah, being that we have that amber glow here, I was not concerned with being able to come back over there and put orange over the top and kill any of that blue shift. And even if I didn't, I could do it. I just have to be a little more targeted. But that orange, I could just basically spray over the entire thing. It really wasn't going to hurt anything. We're just giving it a little bit more of that glow that we're looking for anyway. And so as you can see, I'm working here with the white. I'm going to be putting in a little bit of fur, and notice I don't do like every line and every piece of fur, so some of it gets blasted out. Just key places in there. You know, there's a lot of little strokes in there, but you know, it's not like I have to have every stroke in here. So that is why when we're putting the darks in, we want to get some rough form in there. We don't want to just spray it. We spray it, you know, with a little bit of texture built in. See, you'll notice I'm doing that with that hat. So I'm creating that, see, streaky look, and I'm building that hat up, and I'm hardly not going to have any of the white in the middle section of that. And that hat's going to be darkened as we go further along in this painting. On the background here, I used a dark gray mix just to freehand in some little ornament shapes and stars and things in the background. And then I will go with an even lighter gray, but instead of using a white, I used a gray because it wouldn't be too harsh and get out there too far. Now the candle, very, very easy to do. Mixed up a little bit of white. I had some yellow in my cup, so it turned out a little bit yellow, but that was okay. Knew it was going to be fine. Came back and sprayed the transparent orange over it. Then I added blue to that transparent orange for those darks. Emptied out the cup, sprayed some white in there, and then I'm going to spray just a little bit of yellow over there, and boom, we'll have a candle glow. Then we're going to come in, we're going to put the irises of the eye in, and that is just a very dark gray mix. And we're going to come in here. Now, I want to mention that some of the colors that, as I chose how the direction of this painting went, what way I approached this painting had a lot to do with just what color I happen to have in my cup. In other words, if I have a color I think can be used somewhere, instead of changing colors, I'm going to go ahead and use that color where it's going to be laying in the future. So I didn't have necessarily a rhyme or reason on how I went about it. I didn't plan and plot out this painting, you know, I'm going to work the head, I'm going to work the face, I'm going to work the hair, I'm going to work the hands. I just basically worked with what colors I had in my cup at the time and added them in. In a couple places I left it out. I left the face out for quite a bit because I wanted to do the face all in one shot, and I wanted to have some color around it before I did it. So as you can see, I went with that really dark sepia-ish tone to kind of put some highlights in there, and it looks way too dark right now, but as you know, it's going to turn out just fine. And then I took the orange mix, just a tiny hint of blue in it, and we went over it very lightly since it is going to be a transparent, so we went really lightly. I came back with a little bit of red mixed desaturated red, so that's adding a little bit of green to the red to put a little rose in the nose and the cheeks. We're going to come back. We're going to use some white for highlighting in this later too, and show you how we can get rid of the blue shift on the face, because that'll look really bad at first when we do it. Now, I'm coming in here and it's going to get really dark. So after I do these reds, I'm going to come in with my dark mix, and it's going to look pretty bad at first. Until we get all of the shadows in. But it is key to note that those shadows, those dark, long shadows, are going to be key to giving that dimension and creating that glow. So those dark shadows that extend far into the face is what makes that mustache appear like it's forward instead of it appearing like it was, you know, tight. If those shadows weren't as far out as they are, and as kind of on that the crisp side, you wouldn't have that same effect. So as you have directional lighting like that, bright directional lighting, those edges of those shadows will be a little more crisp. They don't, you know, blend out near as smoothly. So you want those shadows to end up pretty crisp at the edge, and that creates that appearance that it is a strong directional lighting heading towards the face. So of course we're just continuing to work here with our face and creating those darker shadows as we need to. And then I came in here and I'm tying everything together with a slight glazing of orange in places. Notice how we got that red tone up towards the top, but we're eventually going to get to a really, really dark color and to the deepest, darkest colors. And I will work with that darker color and I'll use it, just spraying a little lighter in a few places, but it's going to get in there really deep and dark up next to the hat and just directly next to the mustache. And there are going to be some really dark shadows in the face. I will come back in after I get all of those shadows in, and then I'm going to put some white highlights in key places. Because remember, I'm not doing any erasing or doing any scratching on the face right now. So since I'm not doing any erasing or scratching, I'm going to have to bring those highlights in, and then we'll just have to kill off that blue shift with a little bit of orange. As you can see, I'm moving around my picture a lot, so I'm adding some of them orangish colors and some of them darker tones also around to the beard and the mustache and hair around it. Now, as you can see how ugly that white is when I'm putting those eyebrows in there, you can see how that happens. We're going to come back in and add a little bit of orange on top of that, and then we'll come back and we'll put little bit of gray in them hairs as well to give that final appearance. So we're getting ready to work back on the hair in just a moment. And so as we get into the hair over there, we're going to come back in. So we're going to have a grayish mix. So we've got that orange mixed with our blue until it gets to a dark grayish mix. I may have added just a tiny bit of black, and then we are going to control how dark it is by how much paint we put down. So we're working with a transparent, and we're going to go in and deepen everything up as we need to and put those darkest darks in there. But you can see how that's creating a lot of depth and dimension in that hair, and we really haven't done all of that much work to it. We haven't changed much of anything. I did try to do a little bit of racing in the fur there. Didn't work out good for me because it's been sitting there for a little bit, and so I just went ahead and pulled them out with white. So now I'm going to bring in the strands of hair with my airbrush. So you'll see how I bring strands down, but they're not like tiny, tiny pieces. They're strands, so they're clumped together. And then that's going to get kind of ugly because of the blue shift, and we will wind up glazing orange over it in the end. Anyway, guys, while I got a second here, I am Bill Kennedy with the Airspace. You'll notice there's no intro or outro. And if you have any questions about anything I used today, I will have some links to the description for the material I used. But now that we get towards the end, whoa, don't forget about the splatter effect over there. And if you guys do this, be really, really careful because you can really, really mess up a lot because it's a little bit of a semi-controlled spray there. And I used a clothespin, just aimed my airbrush down onto the clothespin, sprayed off, get them big splatters like that. That's what we're working with. So I'm working in with that orange and blue mix, so it's a little bit of an orangey brownish tone. And notice how as I come back over those lines, everything kind of ties together. And then I'm going to come back, take some orange, and we're going to put some glazing on there to create that amber glow. But if you do that, make sure you are careful. Spray it, look, wait for it to dry, and go back. Y'all have a great day. Bye.